Welcome to another episode of Rupert and Pinchy, where we free the squirrel from its indentured servanthood in the cage. Hey,
That's a
better one?
yeah, good job.
Okay, I knew you'd like that. Hey, Pinchy.
Hey Rupert, how's it going?
Good. Hey, everyone out there, all 10 million of you, we hit 10 million subscribers last week.
No,
Anyway, a million?
no,
1,000.
30.
Okay, 30. Well, that's all right. We love those 30. And those who
Million.
watch that
I'm just
aren't
kidding.
subscribed, we love them too. So
Just 30, plain
anyway,
30, not 30,000 or anything. Just 30.
30G. So no, we appreciate each and every one of you, and we know your time is valuable. So anyway, today
We're
we
going
thought
to
we'd
talk.
we're going to talk about something, but I thought this is like a surprise episode on Pinchy. It's a surprise episode on me because if any of you know me, my first thought is way behind my other thoughts. And actually, it's good to start with a first thought. But,
I don't know what that means, but sure.
well, you've said, like, I've had thoughts. In other episodes, you said, well, in my own thoughts, it's like, oh, good, you're not going to talk about Jimmy's thoughts. So, anyway, I can say something about thoughts that make no sense.
Sure.
So, I thought we would talk about my thoughts about that occurred after I watched a YouTube last night, and it's one that you know me, Pinchy, and
I think so.
yeah, I'm your grandfather. Anyway, I am your grandfather. Okay, so
Okay.
last night I watched a debate. You know, in general, I've gained a lot. You too have gained a lot watching different debates of every subject, right?
Yeah.
But you know how I'm a little frustrated sometimes about debates because it's like, okay, debater number A, you're never going to change your mind. Debater number B, or letter B, you're never going to change your
Number
mind.
B. You say that all the time. Number
Yeah.
A and number B.
Yeah, letter 1. Okay, I'll do it. Okay, anyway. So these debaters, it seems as though in that circuit, in that, you know, at the college or at the lecture hall, in those professional settings, it almost seems like the debaters are never going to change their position. And so why are they debating? Or we think, okay, they had this one debate because they're going to listen to one another. Okay, but you had like 10 more over the next 10 years or 1 year even. Why are you having 10 more if you didn't convince each other that? Is there some other parameter going there? Well, some of it could be monetary, but some of it is huh?
Sorry.
Oh, some of it could be monetary, but some of it could be that each side is trying to they know they can't convince the
Right.
person that they're debating, but they're trying to influence or educate the audience out there, both on YouTube or in the audience present at the debate. But
Right,
anyway,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
yeah. So it was a debate about the existence of God. it was actually, it's really unfair to see Goliath have to go up against David. You know how that they always say that, gosh, he had to go up against a Goliath. I think Goliath would want to correct people and go, listen, I'd rather go up against a Goliath any day. I do not want to go up against David.
I don't want to go against a tiny guy that's agile and will shoot pebbles at me.
Yeah, and has a spirit of God that can, slay giants. So anyway, it almost sometimes seems not fair when you look at the two people that are going to present, and you know a little bit about them. You're like, so one of the presenters was William Lane Craig, who's absolutely fascinating and equipped as a Christian apologist. definitely in the arena of talking with an atheist. And the atheist was, I can't remember his first name, but it was Dr. Atkins or Akins. And he was from England. And so one of the comments on the YouTube was, apparently having a British accent doesn't automatically mean you're bright. but and that's not to be unfair with Dr. Aiken. But anyway, it was such an interesting debate. And so one of the things that was interesting is from our side, and probably from their side too, but I'm just going to speak from our side because it's our side. And we automatically want to think, okay, Dr. Akins, who is a tenured professor at Oxford in chemistry, we want to say, wow, he is really not that smart. When we kind of dismiss him as not being smart, and or seemingly just unwilling to engage the arguments, or have even a logical comeback on an argument. And I think that is a mistake, that we should recognize that, no, this man is a brilliant man, right? He's chemistry is not easy. It's mathematical, and people can learn whatever they put their mind to a certain extent. But he is a brilliant man, and so then as you're watching this debate, one of the things he said some amazing things. Dr. Aiken did. William Lane Craig, top notch. He was right on. Anyway, so one of the things he said was he did not. First of all, you have to listen and you have to write down, like William Lane Craig writes down what he's saying so that he can rebut,
right?
And vice versa. One of the things he said is, we really don't exist.
Who, the Aiken guy?
Yeah.
Oh.
What is that an argument for? I'm not sure.
I don't know how you can maintain that and be a scientist.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously he probably doesn't. I mean, if he really believes it,
right? He doesn't practice that.
Well, yeah, he doesn't practice that. And plus, doesn't he realize that the dean of the college might be watching, and he may lose a position?
I think the main problem with that is that there's no point in debating if you believe that, because there's no one to convince because you don't exist.
Right. You're just you're not even a computer simulation.
And also, the fact that you exist to say that means that you exist, which means that you're wrong, that you don't exist. I guess it depends on how did he put it, because it completely undermines any argument that can possibly be made.
Okay, exactly. Yeah, it's okay. So it wasn't. I'm with you. First of all, I don't think he really believes it, because guess what? He doesn't jump in front of trains.
Did he really say that? I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, how did he say it? Did he just say we don't exist, or did he imply it by his statement?
He said, I'm not sure that we can actually confirm that any of us are really here. I don't know if he said it like that, but how do you like the accent? Anyway, let me keep going. And it's your fault because you made me have coffee this morning.
I made you have coffee. I'm responsible for your actions, apparently.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It makes my life a lot easier.
Okay.
But obviously he doesn't believe that, because he's not going to drink poison on stage. He's not going to stab himself in the eye. He's not going to jump off a plane. He's not going to, I'm not sure he's riding on a plane, jump out of a plane. So anyway, he kind of, I'm not sure. Sometimes they just throw things out there.
Right, just to see what sticks.
Right.
If anything sticks. It's more like to see what irritates you the most.
Well, and again, I want to remind everyone, and myself that this guy is a brilliant guy. He's not stupid.
Right.
So that was one of his arguments. And then one of his other interesting arguments, I'm just going to list three, and then I want to give the comeback that Dr. Craig gave, which was fascinating. I mean, it was expected, but it was really good. The next one of the main claims he also said is that those who believe in religion, it's to fill a loneliness or a sadness they have. And Dr. Craig actually answered that, and I won't go into that answer. And he answered it very well. And he said, well, I'm a Christian and I'm a believer in God, and I can tell you that's not really the reason why I believe. But
Right.
he said, if I grant you that, then he went into explain why some other reasons why he believes. But I found it interesting that, and Dr. Aiken is not the only one that will do this. He's not the only atheist that will say this. But all of them, generally across the board, will avoid the other subject. In fact, they will never bring it up. They will never say, you just believe in God so that you don't go to hell.
Mm.
They never bring up hell.
Right.
Don't you find that interesting?
Well, I'm sure somebody says that.
Well, I've watched a lot of them, and maybe they do. But they're generally always looking. They're saying, "Oh, you accepted Jesus for a crutch." It's like, yeah, I was broken.
Right. Well, that's my thought. Is okay. That first of all, that's not the only reason to why I believe in Jesus, but I'll grant that. Okay. What I mean by that is like, okay, when I am a Christian, I feel way more connected with God because I actually believe in God than if I wasn't, and I would be depressed if God didn't exist. I'll just be honest, because there's no meaning in life. There's no greater end to life, and that's really hard for me because, I mean, it's not just to say that that's the only reason, but like, you're telling me that just because I got this lot in life, that's gonna be it. It's like that is quite a sad kind of thought. It's like, oh, that's too bad. You got the wrong luck in life, and there's no greater meaning. You're just going to die someday.
Right.
And it's
right.
like, and something I was thinking about the other day is, okay, whether or not that thinking about that, another thought that came to me was the fact that, okay, so evolution started happening for no reason. A bunch of creatures started being formed over and over and over and over again, and then at one point, it reaches a point where it becomes conscious and realizes that it was pointless. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Why would that creature? It's just like, oh, we're gonna become conscious. Oh, now everything's depressed, and there was no point in it. Seems weird to me.
There's a lot of reasons to be depressed. It's like, okay, why didn't I just stay at the cheetah level?
Mm-hmm.
That way I could run around
and not
really
think
fast and not think. Right. So that's a good point. So it's interesting that they really never bring up the hell, fire and brimstone. Maybe they're a little uncomfortable talking about that. But it's interesting. They always talk about how Jesus or God or faith is a crutch. It helps us in our loneliness and sadness. And I haven't heard our side respond but this way, but I'm sure maybe they have. It's like, okay, I grant you that. What are you offering? Oh, we're made of chemicals. Oh, thank God. Now I can relax. Anyway, thank chemicals. Now I can relax. um, so no, so that was a really absurd thing. Then he said something which was amazing. He said, science answers everything. It's omnipotent. It answers all questions we may have. And he went into this he called it omnipotent, which was really weird. You know that that science is basically observation. So you're calling observation omnipotent. Anyway.
Right. Well, I'll just say
So,
science doesn't explain itself at all.
well, yeah. So, good point, and I'll share with you. I mean, when we get to Dr. Craig's responses, but he said that, and then he went into discussion, and everyone in the crowd or everyone on YouTube are going like, maybe there's somebody saying my boyfriend left me. How does science explain that? Or my family doesn't love me. How does science explain that? People are going like, I'm not sure what science explain. How to have the best toothpaste? How to infuse my hair with protein, protein and vitamin B? I'm not sure. I wasn't really stressed out about my hair. But so he said that. And then William Craig said, and Dr. Aiken said, I believe these are two strong legs and pillars to stand on. And William Craig said, well, they might be two legs, but they're broken, and I'm not sure how good they are. In essence, that's what he said. And he wasn't mean. He wasn't. Right. They both were not really that mean toward one another. Even the dismissive and basically Dr. Aiken saying any believer denies reality and is ignorant. He kind of said that, but he did it in a very nice British way. Why, my chap, you're the ugliest man I've ever seen. Anyway, so
it sounds so nice when you say that.
Yeah, I mean, you won't even notice. Right away, you'd say thank you, and then you'd go like, "What did you say?" Anyway, so Dr. Craig said, "Well, let me give you just 5 things.
Just
that
5.
Science doesn't. Just 5 that science doesn't explain." And the first one you kind of hit on in a way. He says, "Science does not explain arithmetic; it presupposes it."
Right.
And therefore, to argue that would be a circular argument.
Right.
Boom. Then he talked about beauty and aesthetics. Then he meant 5th. He said, "I have a mind," and basically he's saying he's giving 5 examples of what everybody conscious and above a certain,
you mean conscious or conscience?
Conscious. Anyone conscious and able to tell the difference between night and day will accept these 5 things as facts. He said the third thing is, I realize I have a mind, and I realize somebody else has a mind, and I realize that we don't share the same mind.
Right.
But I can't prove that scientifically.
Oh wait,
that was.
Can you? I mean, it's a. You can't observe somebody else's mind,
right?
Because you never can be in their thoughts,
right? So, or know that you're there. So, so aesthetics and I forget the other 2, but he gave 5 things really quick. Dead silence, no answer. The moderator said, well, Dr. Aiken, put that in your pipe and smoke it. And so, no, he wasn't. This is a very congenial discussion. But what I found fascinating as I was watching this, which I'm not sure why it interests me, because these kind of debates just don't interest me anymore. They serve their purpose. And I learned some things from Dr. Craig and from Dr. Aiken. I'm not sure what I learned, but
you learned that we possibly don't exist.
Yeah, so I really couldn't have learned that. So no, but I'm sure I learned, got sharper, maybe, or got clarity from some of the things he spoke about, perhaps. But what I took away from that remembering, we first sometimes in these situations we dismiss person like that as being ignorant or stupid,
Mm-hmm.
and we forget they're not.
Sorry, I keep pulling my hair. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It makes you look like Fabio. Anyway, you know who Fabio is?
Yes, I
think
know.
that's
Don't worry.
your cousin. It's your cousin William. Anyway, um, so sometimes we forget that they are brilliant and they are smart. And if you know, Dr. Craig said, well, you know, Thomas Aquinas's, or you know, the basic first five arguments for the existence of God. And Dr. Aiken would probably go, yes, they're stupid. And they're not stupid, um, but they are intellectually honest, and they're intellectually
Mm-hmm.
consistent, and they're logical. So, but it doesn't prove God. It takes faith to prove God to an individual. We can see God's effects in nature, right? We've talked about that before. But to believe God and follow Him, that takes a step of faith.
Well,
But
I mean, are you saying that you can't reach the point of believing that God exists, or are you saying in the specific God?
more in the specific God, and more in deep. Well,
because I think that if I look at the arguments, they can prove God exists, but it doesn't necessarily prove which God exists.
No, I agree with you. It proves that God exists, but faith. But So God exists. How do you follow that God?
Mm.
So it takes, like you said, specificity, and then obviously it takes the gift of faith.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another subject. But so yeah, you can come to the conclusion there must be an unmoved mover. So anyway,
well,
Dr.
a necessary being where everything follows. I think that's really. It's just it's as simple as that. It seems by the arguments that God is necessary in some capacity.
Right.
But, yeah, I don't want to go into that, but yeah, I know that's not your point, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, my point being that, you know, Dr. Craig could have dismissed that and said, okay, you know those arguments, right? Okay, I'm going to go a different way. And he went through the fine tuning. He went through the historical evidence of what's interesting is Dr. Craig was arguing for the reasonableness of faith.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't only just go into the reasonableness of faith of believing that there's a God out there somewhere. He did go into specifics about the Lord Jesus Christ, and he talked about the historical evidence of the fact of his life, death, and resurrection.
Right.
And so so anyway, it was interesting when you know, as far as the historical evidence, no matter what historical evidence he gave, Dr. Aiken said, well, they probably lied. They probably made it up. That's just your view. It was just a bunch of hopeful people. And it was just a bunch of people wanting to have fun. And then, of course, not only Dr. Craig, but the moderator, who was William F. Buckley, he said, well, I'm not sure 12 guys got together and said, hey, you know, why don't we make up this story and then let's all get tortured for it?
Yeah, I mean, that's not fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, no, I mean, if you know anything about religion, you know that a lot of religion is very strict and very difficult to live out. Even Christianity is difficult to live out. I just be honest, like, would you rather be eaten alive by a lion or be comfortable? And there's not a comfort in this life. And and that's the one thing that seems ironic to me is you think that you're comfortable, but you're not really. Because at any moment your life could be upended as an atheist. It's like, because you don't have any eternal hope. You only have the physical hope of money, other people treating you well, power. These things you'll only get in this life. So You know,
Mm-hmm.
it seems kind of
Mm-hmm.
ironic though that they have all their comfort in that, but it's not really comfort.
Right. Well, and then the other thing to think about is, you said, would you rather be eaten by a lion or just deny Christ and be in comfort? Okay. Someone will say, well, of the 12, or maybe out of 1,000 people, there would be one guy or one lady martyr that would go like, no, I'm not going to reject
Right.
my beliefs and choose to be eaten by a lion. So maybe one of the 12 would go like, yeah, I'm not going to choose. I'm not going to, yeah, I made it up. Just let me go sit on my couch. Maybe, or let me reverse it. I meant to say just the opposite. Maybe one of them is going to go like, no, I'm not going to reject Christ. Just, let the lion eat me. I'm not rejecting him. Maybe one of those 12
Wanted to be
might be
eaten.
willing to do that.
Right.
Okay. For a lie. They might not be willing to admit that they lied. Okay. And they would rather, you know, be chewed up. But now we have to consider all 12
Yeah, that would be crazy.
that did that. And not only that, so Thomas is way over in India. No one's going to know. No one's going to know that the Sultan or whoever decided to chop him up because he preached Christ or wouldn't
Right.
reject Christ. He could have rejected Christ, and then he could have came back to the
And they would have
Palestine
never
and the
known
air.
that
They
he
would have never
rejected
known,
it.
and he could have told the story. He could have said, "Wow, you know what happened to me? I stood up for Christ, and they were gonna chop me in pieces, and they did, and then I just assembled like Go-Go Gadget." But no, every single one of them did not. And so that is logically, psychologically impossible.
Well, I mean,
Does it?
it's we don't even have to base it on Christian standards of psychology. We could just base it on the typical psychological major person, like that could be an atheist themselves. You just ask them because
Mm-hmm.
it's not just, oh well, they're biased about it. It's like, no, it's like almost impossible. I mean,
Right.
it is impossible. And the idea that you would reject even your own science, let's say, it just shows how far you're willing to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so my point being that every argument from a historical perspective, Dr. Aiken was unwilling to look at that
Right.
um, unbiasedly. He already made his determination he was going to reject it. And so, and then, Dr. Craig went into the fine tuning and he went through the different, 1 times 10 to the 100th
Yeah.
chance that this could happen. And then there's like, he just went through 5 or 6 variations of weak energy, weak nuclear forces, different things. And you have to multiply those out because each chance of having life in this universe, each fine tuning element has to be multiplied by one another
Yeah.
to come up with the total chance. And the answer from Dr. Aiken is, well, people do win the lottery.
Well, that's what people try. People try to solve it by talking about multiple universes. Well, the fine tuning doesn't really work because there's infinite universes, and of course one of them is going to work. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, that's not how things work. You can't just be like, here's a theory that we have no evidence of. We have no way of knowing this unless somehow we built a portal to go to another world, which I don't even know if that's possible. And it's like, is that really more likely than a single god?
Right, right. Or
That's just like, um, it seems like it's just trying to come up with something. I mean, sure, you can
well,
do that, but I'd rather believe in something simpler instead of something that complex. You don't have to go that far. This is a principle. If you can explain it as simply as possible, that's probably the answer.
Right. Well, that's one of the principles of usually if there's multiple choices, take the simplest, most reasonable answer.
Right. One
Um,
God. Wow, that's really difficult.
and Dr. Craig wasn't even arguing about a God at that point.
Right.
He was arguing about the chances that a universe would be created
Mhm.
or be present that would sustain life. You know,
Mhm.
and so anyway, none of the arguments were listened to necessarily, but they were understood. Dr.
Right.
Aiken is not stupid. So what you realize is that he knows, or he's smart enough to know your arguments are reasonable.
Mhm.
He's making a conscious choice. He has a certain impediment, whatever it might be. It could be something disturbing, like maybe and we would understand this. Maybe he knows somebody or himself was abused by a clergy person. Maybe he grew up near people that profess to be Christians and they were terrible witnesses. Now, those aren't going to be excuses
Right.
to avoid eternity, but those impediments are understandable. But even those impediments, people can get through, and people do all the time. But it's not to say it's easy. But whatever reason, maybe it's pride. He doesn't want to admit he's wrong.
Mhm.
What and maybe he's got a good gig,
Yeah.
pushing for his atheism. But you realize he knows, and he's unwilling to make that choice. And really, the only argument that from an atheist that comes from, and just about all of them come through a scientific. Usually, it's a scientific atheist. It can be a philosophical atheist,
Mhm.
Sam Harris or whatever. Um, but generally, their argument is, yeah, but science is cool. And our side goes, okay, we give you that. Science is amazing.
Yeah, it is. I
We're
mean,
on
there's no doubt.
we're on board with that. Okay. Okay, we're with you there. But what about this historical evidence? What about our logical premises? Um, and you realize that you're talking to someone that has the ability to know, and for whatever reason, they're not accepting it. And so
Well, I
that
just sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh, just one of the sad things is you say that to an atheist, they're obviously going to be reject the idea. Well, you know, you just don't believe because you're not allowing yourself. But it's like, if you would answer these logical arguments, well, maybe we wouldn't think that. Maybe we
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't think that if you actually answered the questions. But it seems like it has to be that way because you're given evidence and then you just don't accept it in any way, shape, or form. You just say I reject it instead of actually explaining yourself. And
Right.
it's like, and then another thing that they would say is, why don't we move on from all this religion stuff and deal with the important stuff? It's like, okay, what is important in life other than religion? I'm just wondering
Well,
because
I can think of one thing. It's vitamin B enriched shampoo, but keep going.
right, but the point I'm making is, what is it impeding us from? Is it from us living for ourselves in a hedonistic, self-satisfying way?
Well, I believe the world is flat. I keep going.
Right, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, even if Christianity isn't true, I don't believe that obviously, but does would you live a better life as a Christian or an atheist?
Right.
I'm sorry,
Right.
I want to be honest. I don't want to live for myself. If I
Mm-hmm.
lived for
Isn't that
myself, I
isn't
would be
that
so depressed.
isn't that Pascal's wager? He just
Basically,
Yeah. And so many people, give Pascal a hard time. It's like, well, you can't come to God for that reason. It's like, dude, Pascal already is a believer. He's trying to help you see that it's reasonable.
Right.
Okay? So don't give him a hard time for trying to explain or give you a reason why what he's saying is true. You don't have to accept it. So, like you said, Dr. Aiken and those on the other side, and what Dr. Craig said, and many Christian apologists will say, is listen. Technically, I can't prove to you that there's a God. I can just present evidence to you.
Mm-hmm.
You claim to be a scientist, or if you're not a scientist and you're a plumber, you claim to be logical, and you can follow the logical arguments.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go in there predisposed not to believe, guess what? You're not going to believe. And so, what I would challenge the atheists is to go, okay, I don't believe there's a God. But let me just hear his arguments. And let me try to be unbiased. And if they can go like, those arguments are reasonable, I still don't believe, that is a seed that will bring fruit, most likely. If you're unbiased and honest and seeking the truth, God has made a promise. He will answer. You just need to make sure that you don't waste your whole life
Right.
and not make the decision before your final breath. So what was interesting is just observing the fact that he knows, and we know this. I mean, God testifies this in the scripture, and he testifies this just in observing life. He says they are without excuse. And so, but I just found that very interesting, and that's sometimes why I don't like debate. But I do know its value. It's important for each side to present their evidence or their arguments. But we can't convince anyone of anything. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. How many times have we heard that cliche? You can pour beautiful water over a closed mouth. It's not going to work. There's going to be no benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than pour the water or waste the wine, just hold the wine. Go, this is wine. This is really good. So I just thought that interesting, and it maybe gives us an opportunity to look at how we may approach apologetics or relationships, is to go like, we need to respect a person's intelligence.
Yeah.
Whether they are a simplistic chemistry professor or a very complex plumber. And I mean that. I'm not just making
No. I thought it was funny though that you said a complex plumber and a simple chemist. I thought that was funny.
Well, and I say, I'm not just being patronizing, because maybe the complex plumber said, I don't like the BS of the college, and I just like to be out and visiting people and so anyway. But anyone, we should acknowledge and respect that God has given them intelligence,
right?
And they may have points of view that we disagree with, and when two points are opposite, either both are wrong. But if one's right, or both are wrong, but both can't be right. But if one of them's right, the other one's wrong. And the scripture says that we're to testify, we're to give testimony.
Mm-hmm.
It does to the gospel. We're to testify of Christ. It doesn't say that we're to convince of Christ. We're not to go out there and convince people that Jesus is the Lord. It's like we're to present the truth of the gospel. Let people decide. And if we can approach it like that and respect what the other person's saying, then they might hear what we're saying, and it might sneak in as a seed. Not that we're trying to be sneaky.
Right.
I mean, if it's just that we want to be genuine.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we have to realize that sometimes when we approach, sharing the gospel, we think perhaps that we haven't done it the best way yet. Okay, we sit down with our friend or our cousin or whatever and say, okay, I know I've tried 14 times this gospel thing with you. I got a new angle. This one's going to convince you. And guess what? It doesn't. And the more you try to convince them, the more angry they get. Because it's like they've already heard you. Most likely. They've already heard the good arguments, most likely. And you just need to respect them as a person and let them make their decisions. And so I just thought that interesting when I was watching that, and it just struck me. Even though some things strike me over and over again, as you know, I'm a slow person.
No.
I have to be struck many times before I realize a certain concept. But no, I'll really realize a concept like, wow, chocolate ice cream is the best ice cream ever.
And you realized that a long time ago. Good job.
Well, and yeah, but then I'll go out and I'll go like, sir, what do we have? I'll have tapioca. And then I have tapioca and I'm like,
this isn't chocolate ice cream.
What am I doing here? And it just reminds me.
Yeah.
So
I want to say something is, I think that one thing that ruins debates is the fact that we're arguing something that they're not going to listen to. I mean, you already said that. But something I was considering the other day is, why don't you ask the person that you're debating with, are you here to change your mind? Or are you here to convince me? Because the fact is, what do you think the atheist is there for? Or what are you there for? Are you there to convince him to be a Christian? And I think that the fact is, we don't lay our ideas on the line, and that doesn't mean like that you should easily sway, and change your mind. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is go where the evidence leads. Both of the individuals, whoever you are, and that's hard. That's why you can't really do it, because they'll only change their mind if they're willing. That's how it works. If you're not willing to change your mind, you won't. So if they're not willing, then there's nothing really that you can do. And so in your relationships, it's like, you should be aware that they don't easily change your mind. And then I have to ask each individual that is a Christian, do you easily change your mind?
Right.
Do you expect the people that you talk to easily change their mind?
Right.
Or do you think that they're more malleable than you are? And that's the thing is, I feel like sometimes we always assume that people are more malleable than they are, and then we hit the metal with a hammer and it doesn't bend because it's not softened enough. And so what do you expect to happen when you hit the metal? You're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna continue to strain your relationship when you could be building that. But in your personal life, you could be building that relationship, and then, not to deceive them into a false idea that you guys are friends or something. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, like, you actually have to try to work towards being friends, and not necessarily always hitting them with hitting the metal with a hammer. Maybe there will be a time where that is helpful, but many times it's not, because it doesn't. They're not actually willing to.
Right.
Right.
And also, even though you're sharing the gospel, or in the case of Dr. Craig and Dr. Aiken arguing about the reasonableness of faith versus I guess Dr. Aiken's view is not the reasonableness of science. That's really not his view. His view is that religion is not reasonable, because us on the side of the Christian, we've already accepted that science is cool. So quit playing that card. Yeah, we know science is cool. We're on board with that. No.
Right.
But we also, sometimes people say, well, wow, I don't know how you can believe so strongly and with challenges that you may have or this or that. It's like, there's sometimes I struggle. And doubts are not necessarily sins.
Right.
Doubts are reasonable sometimes. Let me ask you a question. Do you ever doubt that your husband loves you? Yeah. And then what? You go home and you realize, oh, that's stupid. Of course he loves me. Or do you ever doubt that your wife doesn't love you? It's like, yeah, there's sometimes I wonder because, she always takes the last scoop of chocolate ice cream.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, and then you go home and you go like, no, that's stupid. So we doubt a lot of things, But
I mean that's the thought for me is we're all humans. We're strong. We're always strong on what we believe. At least I think most people are. They take something and they're really strong about that, or that they doubt and they have struggles. I mean, does every human have struggles and is also strong in their beliefs? Many times.
Sure. Yeah. So it was just interesting to observe. And sometimes you wish you could just be on the stage for like 5 minutes and go, listen, Dr. Aiken, I apologize. I used to think you were stupid, and I don't think you are.
Right.
I just care about you, and I just want you to, and maybe you are. Just consider my arguments unbiasedly as you can, and that's it. I can't convince you of God. You're right. I can't prove. I do not bring God on my platter, put it before you and say, here he is. See, you can touch him. He's like a mathematical formula. I can't do that. But we can see the effects. And then why can't we say to the scientists, go like, okay, you want us to believe there's such thing as molecules. I can't see them. Well, you can see them under a microscope. Okay. But not everyone has a microscope. So they're taking your word for it then. I want to bring up one of the things that science can't prove. Because you'll think it's cool. One thing that science can't prove, but they assume, and they use it in their calculations, that the speed of light is constant between 2 points and always in one direction. All their computations depend on that. They can't prove it. Anyway.
Well, I mean, how would you prove it?
Huh?
How would you prove it?
Well, I'm not going to waste time thinking about it because if scientists can't figure that out, and they've been being paid for it, but they can't figure that out. But they just accept it. They accept it on faith. Anyway, so I can't see molecules. Well, they're there. Here's a microscope. Oh, okay, I see them. Well, there's a such thing as a chlorine element. There's iron. I can't see it. Here's the electron telescope. No, I mean, I don't have one. Do you have an electron telescope? No. So then you can go.
If I looked at that, how would I know that that's what they say it is?
Maybe I drew it. Maybe your goofy neighbor Edwin drew it, and then sent it and said, "Hey, I just took this with my electron microscope." There is such a thing as what's the metal that's in Wolverine? Antimantium or
I don't remember.
Tantamantium?
Adamantium.
Anyway, adamantium. So then it's like, okay. Oh, by the way, there's even smaller protons circling the atoms. Can you see those? No. Can you photograph them? No. Protons and neutrons.
Aren't the electrons the one that spiral around?
Yeah. I'm not a scientist, so I just throw things out. So electrons spiraling around. We can't see the electrons with the electron microscope. How do they know they're there? Because they see the effect, or they pause it, and then they keep getting smaller and smaller. Now there's something called a boson and a gluon, and all the different. They're coming out of, they're going to run out of alphabet names for these things, and all these things. Well, we can prove that they exist in a a collider. It's like, well, okay, you still are not visually seeing them, and you're still positing a lot of things by unseen. So you can believe in that, but you can't believe all the other signs that I presented that you can't see, but it makes sense. So you realize that someone is making, it could be a conscious or unconscious choice, but something is hindering. Pride, fear. You're going to have to throw away your reputation as a scientist, which I'm not sure why you would. You'd just become more famous. You'd be a chemist that believes, and then everyone would want to talk to you. So I just thought that interesting, and I thought maybe that conversation today might be interesting for us. So that's all I have, other than to remind everybody that chocolate ice cream, scientists believe, is the best ice cream ever created.
Yeah, and I would just have to ask the question about the scientist. Does it seem like they approach the argument like we're saying that science doesn't exist and that they're the ones saying that God doesn't exist? Does it seem like they're possibly acting like we're rejecting something on their end?
Well, they would have a hard time with most Christian apologists, or good Christian apologists, especially for someone like Dr. Craig, that have a hard time denying that Dr. Craig is rejecting science, since half of Dr. Craig's arguments talked about atheist scientists that stated certain things that, and brought in so much science in his arguments for the reasonableness of God. So it would be hard for them to argue. There are, I think, apologists, or there are atheists that go on and they will say that we've rejected science. They call us flat earthers. I'm a flat earther. I believe that I live in a flat house, and but on a flat floor. Sometimes that's why I don't go outside very often, because it is an edge and I'll fall off. No, but so I think that they realize that, our side kind of understands science, but they kind of look at us like rubes.
So it ends up making the argument basically God versus science. It's basically what it makes it seem like the argument is.
Or in their view, it's science versus stupid people. Well, if I could just show you, he mentioned to the crowd, it's like, I'm going to ask you to do something. Is that we've been raised with a lot of biases, a lot of preconceptions. I just would ask you to listen unbiasedly to what I'm going to say. This is what Dr. Aiken is saying. In other words, I'm asking you to strip naked. I'm glad he didn't stop there. Strip naked intellectually and hear what I have to say. Now, you don't hit every softball out of the park, because you got to give your opponent, like, okay, I'm beating you 120-1. I'll let you score another run. Dr. Craig could have said, okay, wait a minute. Aren't they going to use their mind and their logic to reason what you're saying? What do you mean to throw out what they bring intellectually to them and strip naked? You need those. Right. You need that basic information.
Right. Like, what kind of bias are you talking about is really the question.
Well, in actuality, he's stating his case. Take every religious argument that you've ever heard and belief that you have and throw it out the window. You can retain math and science and hear what I have to say. And then he's talking supposed math and science. He really didn't, even though he was a scientist. What's interesting, he didn't bring out, as I think about it, he didn't really bring any scientific argument other than to say science is cool. Now, he did say science is omnipotent, so how could you challenge it? But he did not bring out any that I can think of right off bat. The person who brought the scientific argument was Dr. Craig. Anyway, so I just found it a very interesting thing, and I thought you might find that discussion interesting.
Well, I did, and we went and we discussed it. Were you going to try to explain all of it, and then we were going to discuss it? Was that your plan?
No.
Oh.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for watching, and remember to hit subscribe and send us a lot of money.
No.
No.
Keep your money.
Our sponsor today is Quick Trip, Karuba Coffee.
We're supposed to start that at the beginning.
Oh, that's okay. This is the test of everyone's watching. Go to Quick Trip, get your free coffee.
I'm sure everyone will do that.
Yeah. So, no, thank you for joining us, and Godspeed.
Have a good week.